Welcome back to Squawk Box. A new report this morning saying that China used tiny chips in a hack that infiltrated U.S. businesses, including Amazon and Apple. Brian Sullivan joins us this morning. He's got the details. Brian.
This is, Andrew, maybe the weirdest story of the week, weirdest story of the year. Bloomberg Business Week story, a major cover piece here that Apple and Amazon are strongly denying. But let's get to the facts of the matter. And it's a bit complicated, guys, so I'll just talk a little bit. You can ask me questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. It's how TV works sometimes, which is this, that according to the Bloomberg Business Week deeply researched study, 6 former and current government insiders confirmed that a tiny, like the tip of a pencil microchip was found on servers built by a Chinese-owned company that builds servers for data farms owned by Amazon, Apple, and many others, ostensibly to steal any sensitive information that may be coming through that server farm, because one of the companies that is involved is called Elemental. It was bought by Amazon back in 2015, and what Elemental does is compress video for Amazon Prime, but what it also does is help compress video for things like CIA drone footage and other government video surveillance. Now, Apple, Amazon, and others have all come out strongly denying this. I'll read you the Apple one. Apple just not moments ago, about an hour ago, came out and said, quote, "We are deeply disappointed that in their dealings with us, Bloomberg's reporters may not have been open to the possibility that they or their sources may have been wrong or misinformed." Amazon says it's untrue that Amazon Web Services knew about a supply chain compromise, an issue with malicious chips or hardware modifications when acquiring that company, Elemental, which is the one that I mentioned. So, guys, it's very complicated, but according to the story, 6 people said that they had found a tiny little alteration on a motherboard built by a Chinese-owned company that goes into Apple and Amazon and other types of server products that may have been used to steal information.
Hey, Brian, just to your point, you started reading that Apple denial, and I think the other half of that denial that they issued is interesting as well. They say our best guess is that they are confusing their story with a previously reported 2016 incident in which we discovered an infected driver on a single super microserver in one of our labs. That one-time event was determined to be accidental and not a targeted attack against Apple. But, I mean, you don't often hear that many details when you have a denial issued or something that refutes a story.
Yeah, and it's a great point. I mean, here's the thing. So apparently Apple finds in 2015 that one motherboard of one server had a bad microchip or some sort of alteration to a microchip, which shouldn't have been there. But listen, Bloomberg coming out with a cover story in Business Week. It's a feature piece. Right. They're citing 6 former and current officials inside the government and inside some of these companies saying that this was indeed found. It's a very bizarre story.
Brian, do we have any idea of the extent of the kind of information and data that this would give them access to in a meaningful way, though?
We don't. But when you talk about this Elemental, as I mentioned, Andrew, they talk about video streaming from drones. They talk about government surveillance video. It's not just Amazon Prime and the Jack Ryan show. It's also sensitive government. Remember, Amazon Web Services has a massive government business. They currently do. They would like more government business. So I think the implication, especially as now we frame it in the whole Donald Trump versus China with trade. Remember, computer motherboards and servers are one of the things that the administration had been talking about, getting more manufacturing done here. 90% of all computer products, the hardware, is made in China. If there's a fear about government interdiction and intervention, putting up microchips that are infected to be able to steal information, you're going to ramp up this trade war to an entirely another national security level. But Apple and Amazon are out with strong denials. I mean, Andrew, listen, you've written books, you write articles. I mean, to come out with a story that is so strongly denied, you better be doggone, I almost use a different word, doggone sure you're sourcing, right?
The one thing that I don't understand about this piece, and I did try to go through it a bit, is given the denials, you would have imagined, and the denials now, I mean, it sounds like there were denials then, but you would have imagined that those denials would have been strong before the article came out as well. And so clearly you have to think that the reporters who wrote this felt that those denials were untrue.
Yeah, it's to your. That's the point. I mean, if you're the Bloomberg reporters, and Bloomberg's a major news organization. I worked there for 13 years. If you're a Bloomberg reporter and you go to your editors and say, I got this story, I got 6 government insiders, former and current, who are saying this happened, but the companies say it didn't. You better be doggone sure that your sourcing is good, because I have never seen Apple come out with a denial sort of this magnitude. Amazon, which, by the way, barely comments on the fact that they exist as a corporation, coming out and making comments saying that it's untrue they knew about a compromise. So I guess if you parse the Amazon, if you parsed, Becky, the Amazon denial, it's untrue that Amazon Web Services knew about a supply chain compromise.
But they're not saying it didn't exist.
Yeah, it's like, what are we going to do, become word detectives, I guess? It's a really bizarre story. And by the way, if it is true, think of the implications. That China has put a malicious tiny microchip on a server that is designed to process our information, corporate information, and sensitive government information, ostensibly to steal that information. If that is accurate, if the story is right, the long-term implications for China, for manufacturing, for the trade conversation, and for everything else in between, I think, to my hero Ron Burgundy said, takes it up a notch.